call the controllers, the cabal, the globalists, they created a catastrophe that went through the energy grid. They destroyed the grid. The destruction of the grid destroyed the surface of the earth. So I think Atlantis sank recently, within the last couple hundred years, not thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. And what I think they did was they turned this energy, this pyramid-based energy system for the benefit of all life, into an energy harvesting system. And I think that's what's happening the racetracks.
So
And
go
I,
ahead. Go ahead, Michelle.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think, when you talk about Pangea, a supercontinent,
Hmm.
also called Gondwana, I think that was where we were until this event just fractured the surface of the earth and caused land just to shear off. And they gave us fake history, they gave us fake science, and they don't want us to know anything real. They want to be able to control us and divide us and get us fighting each other, because if we know our true power, they can't do anything. Our history is nothing like what we've been taught. So it was highly advanced when it was destroyed. So they came in and they took over the areas, like in New Jersey, in Holmdel, New Jersey, where the Bell Labs laboratory was in the 50s. And they had a giant horn antenna that picked up on the signal from the galactic center, like Jansky, the father of radio astronomy, and all of these discoveries, Big Bang kinds of things. I think they colonized or camped out at these sites that were connecting Earth with the larger universe, like the galactic center source. And it's, oh, we hear sounds coming out of the center. It's like, ooh, and all of these radio telescopes are set up in different places. Whatever the colonizers are doing, they're doing for their benefit. They want to hide all this technology and give us fake science in return. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about NASA. Did the moon landing really happen? I mean, it's just like it's all been theater, because we don't know who we are. We don't know that we're a direct manifestation of the creator. We do not know that. They've turned our co-creative abilities for good into their co-creative abilities. They fed into our brains the world that we see so that we would create the world that we're living in. And then they've told us lies and given us a false system, false legal system, like I've already said, false history, false science, just to get our consent so they can continue their harvesting of our energy and the destruction of the earth. Their goal was to create that system that you were talking about. And they wanted to live, so they're hosting on us. They wanted us to live, they want to live on our energy forever. And so if they can turn us into a man-machine interface and a cyborg kind of situation and transfer consciousness into a body that's never going to die, that ain't good for us.
Hmm.
I think when they caused this, it was like their chance to get their guy in the top spot. So Lucifer, Satan, I'm confused on all of that when I say that, because you call it satanic, you call it Luciferian, heck, I don't know. But they want their God, their light bearer, in the top spot. CEO, top level management. They do not have what we have in our soul, in our DNA. And so we're the prize. We're the stepping stone to get them to what they want, which is that power and control. So that's like the payoff for them in a very anti-human, anti-life kind of way, they are working everything towards securing their future. Something somewhere is getting it. And the big towers like what you have in San Antonio and all the big cities, like Seattle, Space Needle, and you've got them in Toronto, you've got it in Kuala Lumpur, you've got it in Berlin, you've got these big towers. And I suspect that's part of it, that, how they're getting that transmitted out. I do believe in like the idea of the Saturn moon matrix, and I'm thinking they inserted some kind of hologram over the original hologram, which was positive. They did their own inverted hologram from Satan and used the moon as like an interference pattern so that they can superimpose their, like a Baphomet kind of image over the earth. That energy is going somewhere somehow, and it's feeding something. And the really sad part of this is they're targeting of children. It's, you know, that's a big problem. That's a big problem. And it's probably the hardest thing of all of this. The organ harvesting, the adrenochrome, the sacrifice, the rape. I mean, again, I'm just going to put it out there because that's, pick up the rocks and that's what's underneath them. And I think we both share something that I was refreshed with when I watched our last interview last night. Basically, you have Masons in your family. I have Masons and founders in my family. Didn't know anything about that. And yet I know my ancestors in the South were founders. They were part of what happened. And my parents' generation, my mom and her cousins whose ancestors founded Pasco County in Florida, no friggin' idea of what was going on. And so I'm not saying we're doing this to fix that, but we carry that DNA, and for me, this is about healing. And there's really good people in my family. I mean, I had great role models growing up. But they don't know anything about this stuff.
I know.
And so I don't know. I think there's a segment of us doing this work that are connected to it, but not part of it. Only genetically, but not directly. Does that make sense or resonate?
Exactly. And past minute or so, I'll put on the podcast, especially for the Patreon. But and we can start here. But a lot of people in my family, I don't even talk about things what I'm into now, especially since 2020. I guess you could say, because my podcast, I'm conspiratorial, paranormal, ancient mysteries. I'm like the no holds barred, don't give a f, art or coast to coast. You know what I mean? I like covering all the topics because I feel like in a way everything fits like a one big jigsaw puzzle in a way.
Mm, I
Um,
agree.
but anyways, since 2020, I would say my family has not my wife. My wife, she's very open minded. She doesn't really research, but she lets me do what I do. She doesn't judge. She's perfect. But other people in my family, there's certain things I won't talk. I'm not going to talk about a mud flood to my family. This is the Bible Belt down here. I'm not going to do that. Now since 2020, and that's just one mud flood. I don't even know why I said that, but anyways, like
Same.
since 2020, I have gotten to they have people in my family. I don't when I say family, just about in general, generalizing everybody in my family. I could say stuff about JFK and even possibly 9/11 to certain people. I'm like, huh. So there is a slow awakening, but welcome on board, people. But there's still that's just surface level stuff. Really, with the family, a lot of people in general, not even just friends or just people I don't even know, just the world in general, surface level stuff since 2020, But I guess what it is, I think people it's almost like a fad, whatever's trending on Twitter or TikTok or whatever, with what happened in 2020 or whatever is just trending, people kind of latch on to it. And yeah, I'm awake. I'm a truther or whatever. No, you're not. It's just a phase. You're not really going deep down a rabbit hole. You're just a surface level, pretender, surface level armchair researcher who thinks you know it all. I know it might be a little harsh, but I don't know. I've been bashed a lot over the years with family, friends. I've actually lost girlfriends, relationships because of what I'm into, the research, all the research that I do, But that's a good thing. I would never met my wife. Things happen for a
Right.
reason. But I'm rambling. I'm just
Yeah.
glad to have you on the show, Michelle. And like I told you,
Well, thank you.
because I may not communicate because I'm busy, have a two year old, actually have a job. Um, I do. I just do this podcast because I love it. And just like I told you a while ago, I'm not going anywhere. I know you're not going anywhere, even though we may get burnt out, but we may take a small little break and just keep throwing the punches. But um, with anyways, I'm rambling. Lost my train of thought. A while ago, I said something about the energy grid. You've talked about energy grid. You talked about ley lines. You talk about racetracks in many of your videos and podcast. The bells in the past with churches, cathedrals, how they resonate, the orchestra, the organs, everything, all the energy related mechanisms are natural and not natural. Um, so I guess what sparked your was that one of the first things that kinda led you down the rabbit hole, maybe? Or is that like an offshoot of something else that because you're researching to the energy field and natural and not natural, human made is really spectacular, bar none compared to other researchers.
I started with sacred geometry, ley lines, and the Moors. Before I did anything else, that was my frame of reference. And initially, I started researching the cities and places on these alignments that I had found on my own. It was like uh, intuitive guidance leading me to what I call a star tetrahedron, which is the same shape as the Star of David that we know of associated with the state of Israel. And from that, I extended lines out, I wrote down data points, and then I started tracking them. And that was where I started my research, blogging and then making videos. And as I was doing this, and I know I've gone over this with you in past interviews but for new people, um, I wrote down the cities and places that lined up. I looked at each place, and as I was doing that, I saw the same characteristics, the same design patterns, the history of, it was like the colonizers made a beeline for places with star forts and things like that. Now we, in our narrative, know them as fortifications that were built for a particular conflict. And all of my research points, they're batteries. They're even called batteries. They were serving a function on the Earth's energy grid. And I want to say I did have some understanding of the energy grid, but it was in the process of doing all of this research that I started to notice patterns. And so with respect specifically to the racetracks that we were talking about, and then everything just kind of builds. Um, I did an in-depth boots on the ground field research in Sulphur Springs in Tampa. It's a neighborhood of Tampa. I noticed a gigantic, what looked like a lighthouse as I was whizzing past on the interstate. leaving Tampa Airport and going up to where my mom is in Pasco County. It's a bit of a drive. So it's an outlying area, and this is where she grew up, um, from Tampa. So I see this lighthouse looking thing, and I'm like, I got to go check that out. That's interesting. And I spent a day in there, and I just went from place, and I saw from place to place there, saw how huge this structure was. And it has a whole crazy backstory. All of the backstories are crazy when you really start looking at our history of when buildings were said to have been built. And I really, it's easy to come out in the work that I do because that's what you find when you go look up places. This this was built in 1850 or 1854, whatever it was. Train station, or sometimes a train station, but school building, mid 1850s, classic example. And so I had studied all of that. I looked at Google Earth. I saw where there's a Greyhound track. It's not used anymore. It's abandoned in Sulphur Springs. And I saw how, compared to the airport, it was only a short distance away, and it was like a linear, like let's say a 45-degree angle to the northeast. So you had the airport to the southwest of the Greyhound track, a short distance away. And then you have the Hillsborough River, which has got S-shaped river bends going right by it. Okay, so I've got that research done, and then I did a whole series where I was looking up places based on viewers' suggestions. And so somebody said, you need to look at this place in West London. And it's where White City was, which was an Olympic site. It was beautiful, Moorish looking architecture. At one point in time, they said, we built this for this World's Fair in, let's say, 1905, 1906, also for Olympics. And that it was used for like 6 or 7 of these world fairs and exhibitions. And eventually it was turned into housing. They kept White City as a Greyhound track for a while. That's where the Olympic Stadium was. They eventually turned it into BBC.
Hmm.
So there's an energy component there already. But when I was doing that research, I noticed the same linear relationship between the airport and the old White City Stadium, which was a Greyhound stadium. So I put comparisons of those two places in that particular video I was working on, and people left me comments and said, hey, you need to look at Toronto, you need to look at Montreal, you need to look at Philadelphia, and you need to look at all these places. Copenhagen in Denmark, Sydney in Australia, and there's an airport and a racetrack, usually to the northeast of the airport, a short distance away. And they had like thoroughbred racehorses, horse racing, like the Royal Randwick Raceway in Sydney. Big purses. And I really don't believe that was a random occurrence all over the earth. So I'm landing now with all the research I've been doing, and I'm in the middle of some right now, and I can talk about that a little bit. I think the airports were original infrastructure. I think these racetracks, and it could be like a school, a high school horse track, or NASCAR or whatever. I mean, there's different kinds of tracks, but they're all being used from what I think their original purpose was, which I think was a circuit in the energy grid. And we haven't been told anything about this advanced civilization, so we know nothing about it. And when we talk about reset, I know other people talk about multiple resets. I see one massive reset and a civilization that went from ancient times to modern that was perfectly aligned with heaven and other places on the surface of the earth. And when I was initially learning about all of this stuff, the things that I would read, what was available to me at the time, uh, informing me on this path that I was going to go on, that I didn't plan the direction that it was going to take, which was doing my own research and blogging and learning how to make videos. I was learning about these, like, Karl Monk and the code and the pyramid code, and how there was this precise geometry over long distances associated with the pyramids from Egypt to Mexico. And he would do the math. He's kind of dry. You can find videos that he did based on a book that he wrote called The Code on YouTube. So you just type in Karl Monk and the code, and they're long and he's dry, but it's extremely interesting, because he shows the mathematical correlation between all these places. Call it early GPS. The location on Earth, the dimensions of these temples and sacred sites are encoded into the architecture. So it's like they cross-reference each other. So I'm reading about this stuff and I'm still like, how is this even possible? But what I think happened is that who we call the controllers, the cabal, the globalists, uh, they created a catastrophe that went through the energy grid. They destroyed the grid. The destruction of the grid destroyed the surface of the earth. So I think Atlantis sank recently, within the last couple hundred years, not thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. And I'm working on doing all of the research to pull that together to show exactly why I say that, where I get my information from, and provide the receipts for even saying that, because it's just like not even a thought in anybody's head. And 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 yet I can pull together clear evidence to support this. And what I'm doing is, right now I'm tracking an alignment from Teotihuacan in Mexico to the Great Pyramid in Giza. And I'm looking at everything that's found along the way. And I'm finding airports right next to these alignments. I'm finding a lot of agriculture. I'm finding a lot of racetracks, schools, cemeteries, stores, Walmarts are up and down these alignments, this alignment, but others as well. That's why I make that plural. And what I think they did was they turned this energy, this pyramid-based energy system for the benefit of all life, into an energy harvesting system. And I think that's what's happening the racetracks.
So
And
go
I'm
ahead. Go ahead, Michelle.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think, when you talk about Pangea, a supercontinent,
Mhm.
also called Gondwana, I think that was where we were until this event just fractured the surface of the earth and caused land just to shear off. And they gave us fake history, they gave us fake science, and they don't want us to know anything real. They want to be able to control us and divide us and get us fighting each other, because if we know our true power, you know, they can't do anything. But I'm going to share something, because I should be done with the third part, which is also the last part of this series, hopefully in a week. And I will have a lot of examples laid out. But I just wanted to show you, get this out of here. What I'm seeing is that this was a pyramid-based grid with the power, whether you call it source power, some connection with the cosmos. Earth was like a star map of, or like a mirror of what was up in the heavens, and everything was working together perfectly. And so this is probably not turned off. I'm guessing there's still this energy flow coming through the pyramids. And what they've done is we used to have these, we call them steeples, towers, with the study of what's coming out now about what's called Tartaria and everything else, you hear about Antiquitech. So you've got this weird blue glow at this particular place in Brazil, in Petropolis. But I think this is the way it was everywhere at one point in time until whatever happened happened. I say that because we're all just guessing, right?
Hmm.
We're putting our best foot forward on what we think happened here. And then I get things come up on my social media feed like this, and this is a really short clip of a place in Krakow, Poland that just kind of turned on. And you get the same blue glow
Hmm.
happening there. So I
See,
think that's the energy that was being harnessed in this system, it's generated, transmitted. Everything was geometrically aligned. And so like when we talk about them taking down like steeples of present day churches or other buildings, it's typically a church, but it was other places as
and the
well.
bells.
Courthouses, the bells were part of this system. It was a musical and scientific instrument.
Can I cut you off real
They knew,
fast?
yeah, you bet.
With what were the, just curious, what are the bells made of? Is it iron, or do you know?
I don't,
Majority of the bells from, like, not the bells now, but the bells from previous 1900, you know.
whatever they made of, they were hell bent on destroying.
Why I ask is because you know what type of podcast, I cover it all: paranormal, conspiracies, ancient mysteries. So there's something with these non-human intelligences, whatever you want to call them. Some call them aliens. I think they're here. Whatever these entities are, they could be some type of archonic paras. I don't know. I don't know. But because I talk to so many people, uh, Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Mara, Nathaniel Gillis, other people in that genre of research community believe that there's something with iron. Iron deflects these entities. So if I don't know, maybe I'll look it up here in a minute whenever you start talking about something else, whatever. I'm curious what these bells are made of, because if they did take these bells away, maybe that was, these bells were put there. The iron, the resonance from the iron was to deflect. It was like a bug repellent for, not, maybe not that was the only purpose for these entities to, like a bug repellent, but possibly other things too, like energy and healing and all that. But if one of the scenarios was to take them away, because so that these, whatever this influence, this non-human realm influence from the, that's beyond our visible spectrum, if these bells that are made of iron aren't there, maybe they can easily hack into the energy field. Because women, a lot of women that are low iron, they have what they call abductions. I don't think that they're being actually taken to ships. I think there's something more, something that we can explain. There's something with the mind. There's something with the dream world that we can't explain. When when your levels of iron in your body are low, you have these weird, you're more susceptible to encounters, whatever it is, and also back in the back, I don't know, back in the day, iron was used heavily amongst the population. And also people wear sigils, iron sigils, or pendants. And that was a way to deflect these spirits, the spirit realm. I'm more the field. My level of thinking is that these entities, whatever they are, some call them aliens. I think they're all the same thing. They're wearing this, they're hiding behind the same mask. Some call them fairies, demons. poltergeists, goblins, jinns, whatever. But maybe there's a connection with the bells, in the energy grid with these entities coming through to hack this energy field. I don't know. That's just how my mind was thinking and kind of going in that rabbit hole.
Yeah, and there's definitely something there about the bells that the beings that you're talking about, whatever they are, hate and can't be around. They're here, they're gone. They can't tolerate what I think were the healing tones and frequencies that the bell part of the grid was responsible for. So I kind of see this whole system on the surface of the earth prior to its destruction as being like Grand Central Station of the universe, and that all of the instruments, the organs, the bell towers, and it was even connected to the trains, because if you look at the Union stations of the past had cathedral windows also. They look like cathedrals, essentially. And there may be a few around, like the Indianapolis Union Station is gorgeous. Louisville has a beautiful one. Um, Cincinnati has an over-the-top Union Station.
So it's not just one type of material. It looks like there are bronze bells,
Yeah,
brass, iron, steel.
yeah. But the bells, there's something about the bells and the tones that were hugely important to this original civilization. And if you even look into the earth, you hear the term the earth ringing like a bell.
Mhm.
There's something about bells here. Not my area of expertise. I've delved a little bit into it. But when the controllers came in and did their dastardly deed, and they are cruel, they're cruel. They incorporated the bell into this narrative. So Alexander Graham Bell, Bell Labs, and what was going on with Bell Labs. Um, our history is nothing like what we've been taught. So it was highly advanced when it was destroyed. So they came in and they took over the areas, like in New Jersey, in Holmdel, New Jersey, where the Bell Labs laboratory was in the 50s. And they had a giant horn antenna that picked up on the signal from the galactic center, like Jansky, the father of radio astronomy, and all of these discoveries, Big Bang kinds of things. I think they colonized or camped out at these sites that were connecting Earth with the larger universe, like the galactic center source. And it's, oh, we hear sounds coming out of the center. It's like, ooh, and all of these radio telescopes are set up in different places. Um, Whatever the colonizers are doing, they're doing for their benefit. They want to hide all this technology and give us fake science in return. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about NASA. Did the moon landing really happen? I mean, it's just like it's all been theater.
You're talking about Bel. You're talking about Bel. Just a side note, you can go back to ancient Mesopotamian gods, Bel, Bel,
Well,
which I believe was Marduk. And it'll.
yes.
I'm about the wordplay here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's things have been inverted. And so I see this original civilization as being highly advanced, highly integrated, um, unity consciousness kinds of things, where we had our connection with God, with the source, with creator, and we were co-creating with the creator. And I think that's what this civilization was. So I'm down with the whole idea of the millennial reign of the Christ and the short season of Satan, but I see humanity as being the Christ, not necessarily one individual. One individual represents this tortured, abused human, and humanity as a whole was crucified. And I'm okay with the idea that this person existed, but we were at a high level of consciousness for a very long time is what I'm seeing. And created this beautiful integrated system. And so like cathedrals and the bells and all the things going on with that would be some kind of frequency healing. Bell towers, they're enormous. Bell towers are enormous. I mean, why build them that big unless the frequencies are going out beyond Earth? Um, and I think when this cataclysm happened and the Earth was just torn apart, I think they, bear with me, I think that created an imbalance on the surface of the Earth because there's some anomalies that really don't make any sense. I didn't start out from a flat Earth perspective. I've certainly changed my opinion because of my research, not because somebody said, "Hey, dummy, there's no spinning planet." Um, I've changed my perspective because of my research and things that I found and the tampering with our time and space has happened. Um, they went to a lot of trouble to give us a fake narrative and fake science, but they had to have our consent to basically hand over our sovereignty, which is our right, to them, these parasites. We're talking demons and the beings that you're talking about, soulless. They need human energy to survive. They can't touch us unless we let them. And we let them because we've been educated in this whole false narrative. And if you look at science, the science that we've been taught is gospel, it's all based on the whole idea of the Earth as a sphere spinning with other planets around the sun. And it seems very reasonable to me at this point in the research that I've been doing that we're at the center of everything and everything is rotating around Earth. Something is moving. So if the Earth's not moving, everything else is. And that used to be what was taught. But around 1543, when there was a lot of stuff going on, the Copernican theory replaced the Ptolemaic. And so the Ptolemaic astronomy was more in line with the whole idea of the flat Earth. And flat's a relative term. I'm comfortable with like a toroidal shape, like a donut shape or something like that. Not necessarily flat as a board, but not what we're told.
Mhm.
Definitely not what we're told. And I think what I was talking about with the anomalies, things like the tilt of the Earth, I think be more like a seesaw than the Earth is tilted on its side because there's tidal anomalies, especially in the North Atlantic and the North Pacific, where you have extreme high tides and low tides. Um, when I was dating somebody after my husband passed away who had a house in Nova Scotia, and he came down to Florida in the summer, which is where I met him. It was winter. He was a snowbird. And so I would travel with him up to Nova Scotia. And, at one time of the day, at low tide, there's no water whatsoever, like in the Minas Basin, Bay of Fundy. High tide is like full of water. So low tide, the boats are sitting on the floor of the basin or the bay. High tide, ships are coming in, plenty of water. That anomaly, that tidal anomaly, high tides and low tides, is like throughout the North Atlantic area. And it's also like in Anchorage, Alaska. There's tidal bores in different places. I mean, to me, it's like the Earth is like it's doing one of those. Um, Channel Islands, if you look into them, the English Channel too. I mean, it's like extreme high tides and low tides, on the money, certain times a day. Some of them are double. So I'm just throwing that out there. Those are some of the things that I've noticed in the research that I've been doing.
Bill France Sr. is the creator of NASCAR. He was out of Florida, lived out of Florida. He created NASCAR, and I think NASCAR is still owned by the France family. And he basically built in Daytona International Speedway, Talladega Supernational Speedway, which I really want to focus on. Um, and it's hard to find any information, but I did find something where he was one of the Grand Master Freemason something, one of the lodges in Florida. And it makes sense what I'm going to tell you here in a minute. With Talladega uh, Super Speedway, that's in Alabama, the bank in the turns, the banking where it's on an incline is 33 degrees. Talladega Super Speedway is 2.66 miles. 2 divided by 66, or the 66 divided by 2. It's 2.66 miles. So 66 divided by 2 is 33. And and then but Daytona and Talladega are triovals. You got three, there are trioval tracks. And then I started going back to, then I was like, who created the black and the checker flag? You know, the earliest I could really find, can't really find much about it. The earliest I could really find, because the Masonic checker floors, black and white checkers, earliest I could find was from 1906 on Long Island, or 1906 Vanderbilt Cup race on Long Island was created and funded by William Vanderbilt Jr. of Vanderbilt. He's related to
Mhm.
the Vanderbilts in the 1800s, and that was the first race that the checker. I don't know if Vanderbilt's created. I don't know, but that was the first race where the checkered flag was used. And I'm trying to find more other notes, but it's just crazy when you see all these synchronistic, if it is synchronistic, all these motifs and all the symbolism and all. It's all related to, you could some will say, it's a brotherhood. You talk about the Moors, the Masons. It's one big giant brotherhood, and they're in the know and they're laughing at us.
Yeah. Well, what happened was the beings that came in, um, and you mentioned archons. I'm good with archons. I'm good with reptilians. Um, Fallen angels have been having a field day down here. I believe that.
I think they're all the
And
same
I
thing,
said,
though. I think they're all the same thing. The Greys, the reptilians, demons. I think it's possibly some the same type of energy signature from beyond our veil.
and they're not human.
Hmm.
I mean, what's been doing this to us is not human. They need our energy because they don't have it, and so they get it synthetically. And so, they're using us as hosts, created life as hosts. So it's not just humanity, it's like the animals and all the cruel things happening to animals and things like that, pain and suffering. Uh, it's all to get this loosh, which is very real. They've done a good job of convincing people that they don't exist and using the label of conspiracy theory to paint a broad brush over anything that's, we start to peel away the covering and the veil. It's failing. They're not, they can't hide anymore. Um, but the reality is they've set this up as an energy farm, energy harvesting place. So everything is about our energy and harvesting our energy. Stadiums, racetracks, concerts. ball, sports games, sporting events, setting everything up like a battery. And we're like a battery. And so they're like draining our life force. And then we're working in their system to earn enough to live. And we're tired at the end of the day. We don't have any time for all the things would help get us in touch with ourselves or each other, our higher spiritual sides, and lift us above this. They're keeping us trapped down in our lower chakras and the survival needs and sexuality and, all these other things. And they want to create a messed up human. That's their perfect person, is a gender inverted, twisted, mentally split, split personalities. So they've been working on that angle. And obviously what's playing out in the world today, they've had managed to have quite a bit of success with really messed up people.
Are you reading my mind,
And
Michelle? I swear you read my mind because I'll let you finish your thought, but you're kind of segueing a little bit, which it all relates, energy and even the resets, because it's kind of segueing to what I was wanting to ask you here in a moment.
okay. So their archetype for humanity I see as the Joker. They want to turn us into psychopathic, insane, split personalities between, a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of being. And if we identify with that, people go to the Joker stairs in the Bronx and they dress up like the Joker. Well, that's buying into their sick view. They want us to reenact. They want us to give our permission because they have to have it.
Mhm.
And thankfully, most people didn't get that memo. But, this whole vast MK Ultra mind control programming effort that's been done on a global scale through like mass media, through all of the trauma events, especially starting in 1980, which is really when, the whole 1980, 1981 AIDS started to come in, and then the suicide bombers and a lot of planes being blown out of the sky. Go to a disco with your friends and you get blown up. Go to a soccer game, go to a theater, not being able to get out. They lock the doors and then the place goes up in flames. Horrible way to die. That's all MK Ultra programming on a mass scale. Get the
Mhm.
collective afraid. Um, and you get 9/11 and you get the Patriot Act and give up your freedom so we can keep you safe. Classic Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. But it's not for our safety, it's for their control
Where does that benefit
because they're all
them? Where does this energy loose farming through fear, propaganda, MK Ultra, everything requires energy. Everything. Well,
they get
what?
to
How do they get off on this? Well, what does it do to
they
them?
they get to stay in power. They need the lower vibrational energies that we give out because we're actually higher dimensional beings.
I guess what I meant to say, Michelle, where's the connection? Where's the connection with that part of the energy compared to the natural of the earth of earth energy fields and grids and everything? That they're tainting the earth's energy, hijacking it, you know, like we talked about earlier. And then is there a connection with our energy that they're draining and looshing? So are they looshing the earth and us? And if they are, then where's the connection and where does it fit into their dystopian deck of cards?
So we're just a means to an end. We're a tool. Human life is not important to these beings other than what it gets for them. So so they use us because they can't touch us and they can't do this stuff on their own. They use us for their destructive purposes. And and so they don't care about this place. They don't care about the earth. The wars, as what I'm seeing, is that the wars have taken place in our modern history have been to destroy the grid and the infrastructure, loot, um, to turn people against each other, because we don't know who we are. We don't know that we're a direct manifestation of the creator. We do not know that. They've turned our co-creative abilities for good into their co-creative abilities. They fed into our brains the world that we see so that we would create the world that we're living in. And then they've told us lies and given us a false system, false legal system, like I've already said, false history, false science, just to get our consent so they can continue their harvesting of our energy and the destruction of the earth. You've probably, if you've had, I think you've had Joseph Farrell and other people on
I've interviewed
the
Joseph. I've interviewed Joseph in his home several times, face to face interview.
so
Yeah.
so the idea of a breakaway civilization, I
Mhm.
think he talks about that. I think other people do. They just like trash this place, get everything they can from it, go somewhere else. Does that does that kind of jive with what others have said?
Exactly.
They
Um,
they don't they don't care. They do not care about humanity except for what we can provide them. And they want, so what we're seeing playing out, and I'm personally a firm believer, they're not getting away with this, and we're in the middle of a sea change, and we're going to see some incredible changes in the very near future. I really believe that. But this is the direction that we were heading. So all of the things with the unrestrained, illegal, undocumented people coming from over, and they're military age males primarily, another part of the lie. They're violent criminals. That's what was being let into our communities and into our streets. And did you hear about the takeover complex in Aurora, Colorado by the Venezuelan gang?
yeah,
That's
I
been
heard a
within
little
the
bit about.
last year or two.
Yeah,
So like they take this apartment complex over, they terrorize the people that they live here. That's what they're bringing in. That's what they wanted to bring in. That's why what's happening right now is such a big deal, with getting everybody out of here. They are criminals. Our leaders are criminals. A lot of people in Congress have been on, they've been in forever. They're on the take. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying there's a lot that are. So all of the screaming bloody murder right now with everything's going on is they're being exposed and their funding is being cut. Their system is being dismantled. But their goal was to create the chaos sorcery of destroying our way of life and terrorizing innocent people. There have been 3 deaths by people being stabbed in the heart within the last week or so, just randomly stabbed in the heart. It started with that young man, and then there have been 2 more incidents since then. It's been just in the last couple of days. Now, hopefully that's just the stuff playing out, but that was their intention, was to create all of this chaos and horror. There was a lady that was burned on a subway within the last 6 months or so. Just just set the lady on fire. Um, we are not the the our well-being is not what they wanted. And so all of that's being exposed. I think something new's coming in. I think things are going to get a lot better. But but that was the plan. All of this mass migration, Britain has a hell of a problem right now.
it's
You
chaos
know,
magic.
yeah, it's like, the Islamization of these places, um, rape gang kinds of things of girls, and I mean, it's like terrible what's been going on. It's been going on for a long time. Because am I speaking too freely? Or
No,
just stick me on Patreon.
no.
Got to
This
call a spade a spade.
this is no. you say I don't censor. You say what you want to say. And it depends on exactly. If you start, you can cuss, but if you start doing f bombs, f this, then I may limit
That's
some things that go on YouTube, but it will go on Rumble and Patreon and everywhere else. But hold up.
yeah.
So everything you're talking about that we've been talking about. See, the reason why, remember I said, "Are you reading my mind?" earlier, is because you were talking about something. So here's what I think, why I like dabbing into kind of all the alternative genres of research, the paranormal, ancient mysteries, conspiracies, and all that. Um, like I said earlier, it fits into like a big giant jigsaw puzzle. And I think a lot of these controllers, these elites, I think they're being influenced subconsciously or consciously by some type of non-human intelligence. Some, like I said earlier, some call it aliens, whatever. But I think what the ultimate goal is, this loose farming, the everything, even going to maybe the resets. So taking notes for this, because I like connecting dots. So I know you talk a lot about the old world, ancient mystery. You talk a lot about other things too, but you focus a lot on the old world, the energy grid, Tartaria, mud floods, resets. So I was like, let me try to connect the dot here. What I think's going on, and ask you. So I think AI and transhumanism is the primary agenda for the elites to turn Earth into their Blade Runner dystopian utopian society, and to keep the human race in a perpetual checkmate servitude in their manufactured prison planet that these elites envision the Earth to eventually be. If this is one of their goals and agendas for the future of the human race, and to say that some of these elites have some knowledge on past resets, then does that possibly mean that the resets of the past may be complete and may not happen anymore? Because if there was another manufactured reset, then all of this work towards an AI driven dystopian transhuman world would be pointless, because everything would be wiped out. Help me understand this, Michelle. I have another part two of that question, but I want you to go ahead and tell me your thoughts on that.
I think that's absolutely the direction that they were heading in. Um, I can't say enough. I think there was the one big one with the mud flood that destroyed the whole surface of the earth. I don't see multiple resets unless there was something way, way, way long ago. I see a beautiful integrated civilization where everything works together in harmony and balance. And I think humanity was functioning at a very high level and much bigger. So we were much bigger than we are now, and lived longer and healthier and happier, and knew who we were, knew what we were doing here. But what you just said, I agree with. That's the direction all of this has been going.
AI,
Everything.
transhumanism, the Blade Runner type dystopian world.
Yeah, but that's what they wanted for us. And they're going to get whatever benefit out of it that they get. They've had the creme de la creme of everything Earth has to offer, the best food. They've had the non-invasive healing technologies for themselves that they've kept from us.
They all
Med
died 90,
beds,
100 plus, so.
yes, something like that. They've they've taken cruelty to the next level, and they're just as cruel to their own offspring. They create, are you familiar with the term free martin, where they create the opposite sex in the womb?
Mhm.
And so, you see the trans men that look like men, they're
Well,
trying to look like women and they don't. But then you have trans men that look like women that really look like women, and you can't even tell the difference. And there's a lot of them in Hollywood and in politics. The elite have transgendered spouses
it's
and
the
have for a
it's,
long time.
it's the inversion of reality.
Right. It's all this is they've taken all that's sacred and holy, and then they just went whoop. But what I think is this hasn't been going on for thousands of years. This has been going on for a couple hundred years at the most. And the reset that I see, which destroyed everything, buried everything, that they had to dig out of and create their new world on top of the ruins of the old world. That reset that I'm on happened recently, relatively recently, because the original civilization built all the railroads, all these streetcar lines, all the subway systems, all the buildings. They built that. We're still using that. This did not happen a long time ago. So I feel like they saw an opportunity. This is their one shot, and they almost got away with it. And I do not think they're going to get away with it, but we see how far they've come. I mean, just in the news, you can tell it's not easy to bring things back to normal. What year did you graduate from high school?
Oh, 05.
Okay, so I graduated from high school in 81. And I know in the 80s, and I joined the Army in 82. That was whatever
I
normal
joined in
was.
05.
It's like whatever normal was up until we get to this unrecognizable place with no compassion. Like people are believing lies, no problem. Easy to propagandize and manipulate because they've drank the Kool-Aid, which is a lot of the people we know, good people, but they've just their thought processes have been manipulated so that they only believe what the establishment tells them.
The world is
Whether
not the
it's the
same
news.
post 9/11 to me. Post 9/11, the world is not the same. Me and my wife had the same first period. She was a senior in 01, and I was a freshman in 01. We had keyboard class when 9/11 took place, but it's not the same. I don't. It's almost like did timeline shift then? Um, but let me go and read you part two of that before we get any going it down any other rabbit holes. Let me read you part two of that. So some people in the research community believe that we had a reset 1902, and many people at least think that we had some type of reset that took place in the 1800s. Regardless of when it happened, the surge in technology and other technological advances are far superior from the 1800s to now in comparison prior to the 1800s, or at least depends on how you define technologies. Like, yes, I think our ancient ancestors were very smart and wise, but they didn't technically that we know of have a cell phone. The technologies are just different. So after the manufacturer's resets, do you think Earth was intentionally steered to go to the point to where we are now with society getting so close to that Blade Runner type transhuman AI driven reality? If the last reset or resets were not to happen or take place, then the elite's totalitarian transhuman AI driven reality would not be at their grasp or as close as it is now. If we never had those resets, um, this type of reality that we're facing now with AI transhumanism, um, it wouldn't be as close as we are now. They need this reality in which they reset in the past to be their final piece, or the final capstone in their Luciferian pyramid. Like I said earlier, maybe the last reset was actually the last. If the elites have control over these resets, then I can't see or fathom them erasing this modern day Tower of Babel society in which they created in its image and after their Luciferian likeness.
So yes, it's very intentional. It's all been manipulated. I just think Earth was at a much higher level of technological development and savvy prior to the reset that I see. And I think the elites destroyed the surface of the earth, and then they came in and then they had to get things up and running again. So they
Is
destroyed the energy grids. So they needed to come up with a replacement energy source. So that ended up being like oil, drilling for oil, and then turning it into gasoline, kerosene and then gasoline. And, you know, you see the pictures of the streetcars being pulled by horses in like the 1850s. They had to get it up and running. So as soon as they could, as soon as they get the electrical part working again, they bring in electrical streetcars. There's also cable driven streetcars. But then they take the streetcars out. Why? And then they replace them with roads. And I think that was all energy transference, all of the rail infrastructure, whether above ground or below ground. There used to be interurbans, these streetcars going from city to city, not just within the city. They took all of that out. And so they replaced the rail with highways and roads, and then they've replaced rail that went like along rivers with walking trails. So like in the last one, we talked about the Washita River in Monroe. I would I would bet money there used to be a railroad going along the river there. And there's probably like a recreational trail beside the river that we are walking on, and it used to be rail. And so when I talk about energy harvesting, that's another aspect to it. They took all of this infrastructure out and then they replaced it with roads and cars and traffic and chaos and all that kind of stuff. But their goal was to create that system that you were talking about. And they wanted to live, so they're hosting on us. They wanted us to live, they want to live on our energy forever. And so if they can turn us into a man-machine interface and a cyborg kind of situation and transfer consciousness into a body that's never going to die, that ain't good for us.
Mhm. I think that's the reason
But
why
then
they
they get
created the last reset is because they saw where society, us, the world was going, where everything was just almost like utopic. They didn't like the
it,
previous world, and they know maybe they knew one part of their agenda. They knew they wanted to go towards consciously or subconsciously towards the reality that we're living right now, and they needed to create that reset to put like a damper on the track, the path that we were on. That's why they did everything. They destroyed all the cathedrals and destroying all these landmarks. They took out the bells, the energy grid. They're making us sick. Everything. They need to destroy everything, invert reality to create the new Tower of Babel moment of reality that they want, which is I think is the main probably agenda is AI, transhumanism, etc.
right. So I would agree with that. And they got far along into it, and I'm just gonna say I can't even entertain the thought that they're going to get away with what they've done. I think I believe in God. I believe we have help. I do not think that what they've done here, because the crimes against humanity, the crimes against creation are off the charts. They're laughing all the way to the bank. Like I said earlier, they're laughing at us.
Mm-hmm.
They're very arrogant. They're very mocking. And, again, with a lot of the people that you've talked to, because in the course of my education, all of this, I know there's, talk about predictive programming, um, words that are used, like with the Las Vegas shooting a couple of years ago. Um, there was a lot of symbolism in there that was mocking. Um, the shooter was last name was Paddock, and a paddock is somewhere where you have sheep. These are things I remember reading when that happened. They've got all these terms built into their false flags. I say false flag, whatever they've set up to get a certain outcome that they want. In that case, maybe fear, the fear of the moment, shooter going into the crowd or whatever the heck they're doing with all of that. I think when they caused this, it was like their chance to get their guy in the top spot. So Lucifer, Satan, I'm confused on all of that. When I say that, because you call it satanic, you call it Luciferian, heck, I don't know. But they want their God, their light bearer in the top spot. CEO, top level management. They do not have what we have in our soul, in our DNA. And so we're the prize. We're the stepping stone to get them to what they want, which is that power and control. So that's like the payoff for them in a very anti-human, anti-life kind of way. They are working everything towards securing their future. And we're just in the way. And the really sad part of this is their targeting of children. It's, you know, that's a big problem. That's a big problem. And it's probably the hardest thing of all of this. The organ harvesting, the adrenochrome, the sacrifice, the rape. I mean, again, I'm just going to put it out there because that's, pick up the rocks and that's what's underneath them.
Mhm. And you said you didn't know what to call them. It's like Lucifer, Satan. That's just labels.
It's,
To me, it's the ideology. It's the concept of Lucifer or Satan or you know e- evil, whatever you want to call it. Um, and you're talking about with the children. You have like Monsters Inc., where they use the fear of children to fuel the city. That's basically what this reality is. The fear they use from us is to they harness that fear, that energy that we emit from all the fear, the chaos magic that they create in this reality through false flags, through everything, under the sun. And that's why I feel like can't prove it, but man, that's why I really think there's some type of non-human influence,
yeah,
consciously,
there's no doubt about it.
consciously or subconsciously. Whether these elites or controllers, whatever you want to call them, whether they know it or not, these plantation managers, they're following a script. It's just I don't know if they know they're following a script, but they are following the script of some type of non-human influence because it's just hard to believe that flesh and blood people like you and I, that are of influence and power, just even as evil and sadistic as they are, it's hard to think that they can just create and orchestrate all of this on top of their head and it's some type of influence, you know.
I would say that it is planned and probably at the top of the pyramid, they know exactly what's going on. I do not think that everybody's a Mason who's a Mason or an Odd Fellow knows, or even an elk, they're in it too, um, have any idea of this. And I think the further up you go in the hierarchy, then you get into that. And then you probably do have those elements that you're talking about above that that are orchestrating this. But I have no doubt in my mind that this is a very well planned out, multi-generational, um, there's a particular word I was looking for, but um, planned operation, what they're doing. And I think they knew they weren't going to get away with it. They knew that. They knew we were going to wake up. And they did everything they possibly could think of to prevent that from happening, but they can't stop it. Um, but I want to share my screen again.
Go ahead.
Oh, turn it on for me, please.
Oh yeah, I forgot we
We
reconnected.
switched.
So yep. All right, go ahead.
And like I said, I've been able to connect a lot of dots with this series that I've been working on, pyramid alignments on the Earth's grid and what they reveal. Teotihuacan in Mexico to Giza in Egypt. And this is the leg of that that goes through the southeastern United States. So it enters at Panama City Beach and it exits on its way across the Atlantic Ocean to the coast of France at Corova Beach in North Carolina. It's just below the state line with Virginia in the Outer Banks area. Okay, I've got a ton of information, so I've got to focus on something specific here because I got a lot to say about this. But I'm going to the racetracks since that's a topic that you're interested in, and I just want to show you what shows up on this alignment when it comes to racing tracks, racing circuits, motorcycle racing, all kinds, and the railroads and all this other stuff going on. You know, and again, when I say I think they reverse engineered this grid into an energy harvesting system and all the things that I found along the way that supports that idea. So race car driving, motorcycle, motocross is a big deal in the South, right?
Yep, I had you
You know, and
muted, or I was
you know,
muted.
and some and some people say, oh, well, it's just random. Well, it's not random. I mean, I'm finding the same things here in the US that I found in Mexico, and I'm finding the same things in France. The same things. So, I come across places like Moto VIP in Adrian, Georgia, which is an off-road motocross facility. And it's also a high level of injury in this particular sport. So again, there's that aspect that, they're creating these racetracks. Young kids do this type of racing, but it's also inherently dangerous.
Mhm.
Probably fun as heck if everything goes right, but this is happening on what I believe were originally circuits. Now, another element of what I'm following is the whole idea of all of these dunes and places that show up all along the way, both inland, like here in Georgia, the Ohoopee Dunes, and also on the coasts. And I'm looking at those presence of dunes and deserts and swamps and estuaries as indicators of the destruction of the surface of the earth. Because these kinds of findings are all over too, and I found them along ley lines, which is how I got tuned into it. Okay, so that's one, and here's another one just up the alignment in Swainsboro. There's another racetrack.
Oh, dirt track.
And let's see. There's a lot of animal breeding, and I think they're harnessing the inherent power of the grid lines
What ley
for
line
agriculture.
are we looking at right here? Also,
So
ley line that I with the Talladega Super Speedway that I was talking about. We know the 33-degree banking, 2.66 miles, 66 divided by 2, 33. It's on the 33rd degree parallel. You have Atlanta Motor Speedway. You have there's a few others. You also JFK died on the 33rd degree parallel. I think the 33rd degree parallel is the sacrificial altar of the elites. Um, but anyways, I digress. Go ahead.
well, it probably is, but originally it was positive. 33 is a master number,
Hmm.
a master teacher number. So again, they've inverted everything. So this is on an alignment that goes from the Quetzalcoatl Pyramid at Teotihuacan in Mexico, outside of Mexico City, all the way to the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Hmm.
And it's cities and places in alignment between those two pyramids. So we've seen those two already on the alignment, and then I found a nuclear power plant, the Savannah River nuclear site, and I'm thinking nuclear power was an original technology also, because they're building these places. If they built them in modern times, they're building them in wetlands, which makes no sense. But again, saying that, I'm compiling the evidence to support what I'm saying. So, there's a lot of information in there. The DuPonts are associated with building this Savannah River site. The the first nuclear, let's see, the location where the neutrino was discovered at the P reactor. Harry Truman, who was a 32nd degree Mason, a Shriner, requested DuPont's help in building this place. And they're associated with a lot of other things, including chemical plants with histories of contamination, environmental
Speak
contamination, and things like that.
speaking of
So they're
racing,
doing these things on these.
Jeff Gordon's his sponsor for his whole career was DuPont.
Yeah, they're not our buds, unfortunately. They've been high up in all the things that have been going on here, not for our good. So again, I'm tracking these places, specific places on the alignment to see what's there. I find the Mid-Carolina Speedway is, so I started in Georgia with showing you, and we're now in South Carolina, same thing, motorcycle dirt, flat track race course. And the next one we come to is the South Carolina Motorplex and Mudplex. Like I said, I got tons of data points.
You do
So I
bunch.
apologize for that, but I feel like it's important since what I'm saying is kind of different. But I've been studying these subjects for a long time, and I wouldn't put it out there if I didn't think it was important. You find, railroads in the middle of swamps, and I think, again, I think the railroad was there. I think the destruction of the grid took place through the rail lines and things like that, and that's why you have the swamplands and have the trains going through deserts. And I think I think the grid went haywire when I would say a directed energy or directed frequency attack on the grid took place, and it just destroyed itself. Uh, there's a NASCAR track, so bear with me. Darlington's on here. We're going to come to
Yeah,
that here in just a moment.
South Carolina, I believe.
Hmm. There's the Darlington Raceway, and there's also a drag strip there. I think the giants are buried underneath us, and I think they show us in this weird art that gets out there. I think they're letting us know, giving us a message that they were entombed in the earth. And I think it happened all of a sudden, kind of like a day the earth stood still kind of scenario where it just like, oh, and wherever you were, you got fried or buried or something. And that's another mocking, hey, we're going to show you, but we're not going to tell you. And you have to figure it out yourself.
Well, speaking of giants, have you seen in predictive programming? I guess have you seen the Cabin in the Woods? It's a movie,
Mm-mm.
Cabin in the Woods. It's like it's crazy. Basically, to sum it up, it's a sacrificial place. Basically, these kids, teenagers, young 20s, whatever, they go out to the cabin in the woods, they hang out, drink, drugs, and it's basically one big sacrifice. And all the to spoil it, um, all the bloodshed, it's actually a it's a it's like a simulation almost. It's a this is a complex, this place. They think they're out in the woods, but they entered like this mechanism or this um laboratory, but it looks like they're in the woods though. And this bloodshed is being it goes deep into the earth, and a giant at the very end comes out with a huge hand. It's crazy, like the bloodshed fueled this giant, this beast to come out of the earth.
Yeah. And honestly, for all we know, that was like a snuff film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're that evil. that they
Mhm.
would film something happening real time and pass it off as pre-done. I'm just saying it's that bad. You know,
Yep.
it's in our face. They flaunt it. Um, we got the Sumter Speedway, the toughest little dirt track in the South, the oldest continuously running dirt track in South Carolina, used for car racing. It has been raced by many famous NASCAR stars, including Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, Bobby Allison, and Cale Yarborough. Now, I'm old enough, I recognize those names. Uh, so you keep going here. You got these airfields all along the alignment. I think they're using the energy of the grid. Tennis courts, I think, are circuits. They look like solar panels from above, especially. The YMCA, you know, same idea. It wasn't set up for benevolent purposes, but we think it is. Um, my research really has taken me down a lot of rabbit holes. This is Darlington, NASCAR, owned by NASCAR. Hosted a variety of racing events since it opened in 1950. A staple of the NASCAR Cup Series and its Southern 500 race is one of the most prestigious races on the schedule. Now, just to kind of give you an idea, so this is the alignment, the pyramid alignment. Let me see. It's hard to tell them. It's right here. It's the Darlington Raceway right here, and then the drag strip is over here, so it's pretty close.
And there's probably an airport pretty close.
I'm pretty sure. There's lots of airports around here. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, this is close by. This is in Florence. So Florence is like one town over this particular one. And then if you look at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it's a huge
Mhm.
circuit. So all these places can fit inside of it. So we've got Vatican City, Wimbledon campus, the Roman Coliseum, the Rose Bowl, Yankee Stadium, and the Kentucky Derby would all fit inside that circuit. That's what that's showing. And I'm going to talk about some of those things. But anyway, I mean, you get the idea. And they're just all up and down this alignment. And can you think of the name of the speedway outside of Dallas?
That's Texas Motor Speedway.
Yeah. Have
It's
you
it's in Fort
studied
Worth.
that?
I've been there a good bit. I go there. Me and my wife we like the Dallas area. Go watch some baseball, watch racing. The baseball's in Arlington and the racetracks in Fort Worth, but I had never really dug into it. All I know is it's on the 33rd degree parallel.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So there's a really, really creepy symbology going on here. It might be Texas Motor Speedway. I'm trying to think. Oh my gosh. There's a tower at one of these places that looks like a snake coming out of a basket.
Hmm.
Which one is it? Is that it? It was a place that, oh, this is what I'm looking for. It was a place that, yeah, it's the Circuit of the Americas. I'm sorry.
That's in Austin,
Somebody's,
Texas.
somebody had suggested that I look into it. So this is how I know about it.
Yep, that
So
one's in Austin,
it
Texas.
it really looks creepy.
Hmm.
And then when you look at it from like an aerial, there's an eye. Let's see. So you've got, it looks like a tail fanning out here. You've got the head, and then I have the perfect picture in my blog post. There's an eye, like it's like a serpent's eye or something. Can you see there?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's a good picture of it right there. It looks like a serpent's eye.
It does. And then you got the phallus in the back or serpent, right? That view right there looks like a phallus.
So is something going on with all that stuff? I think so. This stuff is everywhere, and part of their control over our consciousness is all of this hidden symbolism that they know about, but we don't.
Okay, I know we're running out of time here. I kind of asked you a little bit about it, but my thing is, what is it though with these racetracks? Not just race car tracks, any kind of track, horse tracks, anything. Not just racing. Are the loosh that they get from us, everything. What does it feed into, and how do they harness that? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? What do these racetracks feed into to where they benefit from? Where do they benefit from the loosh feeding, the loosh farming from us at these coliseums, at these games, at these, at these football games and all the loosh harvesting that goes on, Uh, how do they harness that, and what do they do with that?
Something somewhere is getting it. And the big towers like what you have in San Antonio and all the big cities, like Seattle, Space Needle, you've got them in Toronto, you've got it in Kuala Lumpur, you've got it in Berlin, you've got these big towers. And I suspect that's part of it, that, how they're getting that transmitted out. I do believe in like the idea of the Saturn moon matrix, and I'm thinking they inserted some kind of hologram over the original hologram, which was positive. They did their own inverted um, hologram from Satan and used the moon as like an interference pattern so that they can superimpose their, like a Baphomet kind of image over the earth. Uh, that energy is going somewhere somehow, and it's feeding something. You're talking about it as kind of a collective
Yes, and
entity.
yes, and where is that
So
going? And
let's,
it's almost like this is almost like a simulation. I'm not saying a video game. It's like,
right.
well, what's it fueling? Is it the does it go to fuel the hard drive in this computer? Like, well, what is it? I,
Well,
I believe it exists. I believe it. I just don't. I can't wrap my head around
yeah,
for what exactly.
again, I think this place was positive. I believe the creator of the universe is divine love. I believe we're divine love. I think that's the predominant emotion, but there's this element that feeds on fear and the energy, this organic positive energy that doesn't have it, like the polar opposite of the creator. And it wanted it. It wanted what the creator had. It wanted what we had. And they did it the only way they can. But they had to lie and steal to get it, which they've been doing to this day. And you can't get very far with lying and stealing, which is why they'll ultimately fail, especially in this day and age where we've got the tools like our conversation here, where we can connect and connect with other like minds, other researchers, just trying to figure out what the heck happened here and what's going on and how it affects us, and hopefully get it out to the general public, and have those that are capable of receiving the information and wake up to there being something very wrong here. And something has been harvesting it. You get the same effect with stadiums, like I said earlier, same kind of idea. The CN Tower on the Toronto waterfront is right next to the big major league sports stadiums. Used to be railroad through there, so they're using the old railroad system for energy transference, and instead of transferring free energy, it's transferring our own our own energy.
And
So
a lot of
something is sucking it up.
you ever been to a sporting event like a football game, a baseball game, or have you ever felt
Years ago.
drained? The draining afterwards, you're giving your energy. The crowd, thousands, 60, 80,000 people are giving their energy towards the players on the field, towards the game. Life is a game. This reality is a game. But they're giving and once you leave, you're totally drained. I mean, your battery is like on E, ready to just melt.
So they're using those stadiums as portals. That's one of the ways that it happens. And we're, polarized, opposing home team, away team, and that's going back and forth. And the last time I went to a baseball game, I was probably a teenager at the most, probably Baltimore Orioles or something like that. And I think I've been to a couple of hockey games and a couple of basketball
What
games,
if
but
this
it's been
energy what if
years.
this energy that's being emitted, rather the racetracks, sporting events, stadiums, the energy that's being emitted, it's like you could say it's invisible. It's being emitted like a
Right,
Wi-Fi signal. You can't see it,
right.
but it's there and it's going to something to fuel it. What just happened? Oh, there
Let me
we go.
see. Yeah, I shared my screen. So we've got our energy field around us. Some people can see it, but most of us can't. And so because we're really not aware of our own energy field, um, we don't know that we're a wave particle also. So it's this unseen
Mhm,
energy that they're harvesting.
mhm.
And that unseen energy is like what we share with each other, with the creator. It's like our hologram. Our energy field is our hologram. And so we've got our physical bodies, you know, our particles, but we're also a wave. And with whatever has taken place, with whatever's caused our amnesia, which I believe has been deliberately done, they, we don't know. We just think, hey, this is it. We live, we work, we pay taxes, and we die. Nothing else going on here for us. But I think the original humans knew who they were, why they were here. There wasn't this war and this fighting. I think they were involved in this beautiful creation of what we can still see and experience, because they got rid of a lot of it.
That's
A
why I
lot of it
think
was
that's
just
why I think
deconstructed.
our forefathers and the civilization that our forefathers built was wiped out with manufactured resets to push and steer humanity towards the current state that we are in now.
Yeah. Yeah. And my only disagreement, and then I know a lot of people feel like there's been more than one. I think there was one major one, and that things were great prior to that. And that's why, like with the last video that I showed you, those ancient sites in Louisiana and Great Britain that are perfectly lined up with the heavens, that didn't just happen
No.
randomly. I mean, that was part of um, a plan to create a mirror of the heavens that goes way far back in time. And that same precision exists up to the what we would consider modern, but that's only because the Freemasons have taken credit for it and explained everything away. But you find that same kind of precision and alignment with modern buildings to the solstices and the equinoxes and the stars. It's the same with the architecture of the world we live in today as it was thousands and thousands of years ago and what we would consider ancient. And, again, my work is going along in the direction of really trying to bring that out and provide solid examples of what I'm talking about. Um, because like I said, I've been studying this for a long time, and that's what I see, that they've done all of this whole transhumanism and AI and, herding us in the direction that they want has been relatively recently, within the last couple of years, 100 years, but it's been well planned. And what exactly the heck they did, I have some ideas, but I know why people would think it happened in the early 1900s because you've got pictures of big cities like Pittsburgh that are clearly being dug out that you can find on the internet, dated from the early 1900s. So, WTF?
Hmm.
It's like dropping a plate and it having it shatter and then trying to put the plate back together again. But I'm of the opinion that there was a highly advanced worldwide civilization that was completely integrated, and that got destroyed. And when it got destroyed, it really got destroyed. And so that's when you get the mud flood and the weird effects with the cities and the buildings and the slanted streets and all of that. It just destroyed everything.
Well, I guess we're going to end things for this time, Michelle. It's always, I know I don't always communicate with you, but I do stay in touch with your interviews and your videos. And I always look forward to our chats. I usually try to get you on at least twice a year. So this is the first time this year. So at least one more this year. So, but yeah, it was a treat, honor, a privilege. Thank you very much for coming back on.
Again, I appreciate being on, Michael, and I appreciate you. And I think we have a lot in common. And um, you know, li- like yourself, just trying to figure everything out. But I'm glad you're doing this work, and um, I think I'll have a lot more to share the next time we talk because I'm in the middle of some bigger research projects that really bring a lot more of this information out.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you, Michael.